ABC's rolling.
Good morning to all of our Twitter viewers joining us for this press conference. Good to have you on board. Okay, we're ready? Oh, good. Thank you everybody for coming out today. I'll just address a couple of issues before handing over to Evan Mulholland. And our guests today, we have Alex, Sid, Cheryl and Wayne, who are the human face of the financial mismanagement of the Allen Labor government. We'll talk a bit about that in a few moments. I wanted to address first the comments this morning by Treasurer Tim Pallas. How much pain do Victorian households and businesses have to bear due to the financial incompetence of the Allen Labor government? Tim Pallas has come out this morning and told us what we're all suspecting. We're in for another horror budget in May this year. We've been warning the Victorian government under Jacinta Allen that it needs to get its economic act together. Victorians continue to pay the price for financially reckless and economically irresponsible actions by the Allen Labor government, whether it's ploughing on with the SRL when we don't have the money to pay for that major project, whether it's not addressing systemic issues of corruption and waste inside the Allen Labor government, which we've seen in report after report. Victorians are paying already the highest taxes in the country. It's more expensive in Victoria already to send your child to a government school. The delays in getting an ambulance, the delays in getting a hospital bed, delays to roads maintenance around our state, big holes in our justice system and in our child protection system. All of these systems are in crisis already. And Tim Pallas and Jacinta Allen are already telling us now that in May, we're going to be subjected to another horror budget. And this can mean only one thing: more taxes and services being cut back to make up for budget holes that shouldn't have been there. Victorians deserve a government that will manage our economy and our budget prudently and responsibly so that people don't have to pay the highest taxes in the country, and so Victorians, particularly Victoria's most vulnerable people and communities, don't miss out because health services have to be cut, or it's getting more expensive to send your child to a government school, or because you have to drive on unsafe roads, or because as a young person you can't be put in a safe and loving environment as part of our child protection system. This is an early sign that we're in for another horror budget. I wanted to address the issue today around the Victorian Managed Insurance Authority. The people who are with us today, who are joining Evan Mulholland and I today, are the human face of what happens when a government acts in an economically irresponsible manner and doesn't manage our economy and our agencies of government well. The people with us today, Cheryl and Wayne, Alex and Sid, are just four of the people, of the many, who have been adversely affected by the failure of the Allen Labor government through the VMIA to manage the insurance system by making sure that builders have domestic building insurance when they take on these jobs. We saw too many instances last year where the VMIA and the Allen Labor government simply dropped the ball in doing the most important thing that the VMIA is supposed to be doing: making sure that insurance is in place so home buyers, whether first home buyers or other buyers, can be protected from financial collapses or other defects in building. That's the VMIA's job, to make sure insurance is in place. But as if that wasn't bad enough, the VMIA has put people, including those with us today, through unnecessary hardship, delays in processing insurance claims, and taking up petty issues that deny effectively people who are deserving of insurance cover, of the relief that they need so they can get back into the homes they've invested their life savings in. It's not fair that people whose homes have been delayed because builders have gone bust without proper insurance in place should be put through the ringer a second time by a government that is so callous it puts people through hoop after hoop when what they really need is insurance support so they can get their homes finished and that they can move their families into the homes they've invested in. It's not fair and it's not right. I'll hand over to Evan now.
Well, thanks, JP. Behind me, we can see the real-life consequences of Labor's financial mismanagement. We know that Minister Danny Pearson was briefed about issues in the residential construction industry and did nothing about it. He obviously knew about the Porter Davis collapse, the collapse of other home builders, and so should have acted to properly resource the VMIA so it had the capacity to deal with these claims. We see today, through Freedom of Information requests done by the opposition, that over 1,300 outstanding claims for insurance. That's 1,300 families, just like the ones behind me, that are waiting, that are stuck through bureaucratic processes, or that are being pushed back onto VCAT. In many cases, like the families behind me, the VMIA has said, well, no, that's it, it's time to go to VCAT, and often the fees for that is more than the actual just compensation that they do deserve. So it appears, and in fact I know through speaking to these families, that under Labor, the great Australian dream has become the great Labor nightmare. Enough of hearing from me. I'd really like you to hear from some of the families that have gone through this hardship. So I'd first like to invite Sid to come speak to us briefly.
Thank you. Thank you, Evan. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Just start with your name.
Yeah. So my name is Siddharth Prakash. I'm a homeowner. I trusted the VMIA and it was a big mistake. So the VMIA's CEO, Andrew Davis, says that they provide homeowners with a builder who can complete their home at a price that minimises homeowners' out-of-pocket expenses. However, my experience, is that the reality is exactly the opposite. In 2020, I made a claim with the VMIA, as do many Victorians. After months of waiting, the VMIA's conclusion was we had to contract with their selected builder, quote, to have insurance approved. I warned the VMIA that their builder had underquoted, but the VMIA said I was wrong. And the chief of VMIA Building Insurance said that they were backing their builder. Now, after 3 years, the VMIA builder has abandoned the job because they couldn't deliver on the VMIA-backed quote. We are in a worse off situation just from following the VMIA's instructions. What's worse is the VMIA is now avoiding their responsibility. It's taking a toll. It's taking a real toll on me and my family. Now they're saying that we are responsible for following their instructions, and if we're dissatisfied, to go to VCAT. VCAT is jammed with VMIA cases, and it is unfair for the VMIA, who all we did was ask for our insurance support, and it's been a double catastrophe for us after the initial builder's insolvency. Any Victorian could be in our situation, and it was a big mistake for us to trust the VMIA or their builder. Thank you.
Thanks. I might quickly hand over to Cheryl from Clyde and then Alex from Craigieburn.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Cruz. We are family who have been caught up with the Porter Davis collapse in March last year, and our house was one that we were planning to build as our final home as we were looking towards retirement, my husband and I, and it's left us in limbo, the collapse of Porter Davis, as we haven't been able to get any real support from VMIA. We chose not to go with their builder, believing that from all the horror stories, everything we'd read in the past, they were not going the best fit for us. We chose to go with a builder, smaller one, local to our area, who we felt would be able to give us the build we want. However, it's taken quite a long time because of the VMIA lack of compassion, lack of ability to get their case through to actually allow us to get back on site. They then would only pay out a percentage of the 20% that we were entitled to because we went with an independent builder, and then they rejected our defects claim on the basis that they were not defects but only incomplete works. Now, things like slabs not properly built, to me, is not a incomplete work. It is actually a defect, and our new builder has said exactly the same thing. The independent inspector has said the same thing. Their only response to us was, well, take it to VCAT. Unfortunately, while we're investigating, it is going to cost a lot more than what we're claiming through them. At the same time as all this, we are renting, and our landlord now wants us out of the place, leaving us in a situation that we can't get rental for 3 months or so that we will need it. We would need to take out 12 months, which we would then have to break. I'm not keen to do that because that's going to cost us extra money as well. Renting a place for as long as we have has also added cost. We've had to put things into storage, so added rental costs. So this is actually creating quite a big stress for our family and leaving us in a situation that we are going to possibly be homeless, and we don't know which way to go until our house is built at this point.
Thank you, Evan and JP. My name is Alex Perotta, and with my fiancée Tamika, we're a young couple who are building our dream house with Porter Davis in Craigieburn, who unfortunately collapsed last year, as many of you may know. We heard the heart-wrenching news through an article that came out that Porter Davis had collapsed, and immediately we decided to put our claim through the VMIA. As we're a young couple, we didn't want to continue building with another volume builder, given that the risk that such a reputable company like Porter Davis had collapsed. We didn't want to continue with another reputable builder, given that the industry seems that they'll keep falling, and we didn't decide to go with another builder. The VMIA have unfortunately provided minimal support and guidance, with only one phone call being provided to us in the last 12 months. The personal toll it's had on our family is undescribable. The company collapsing, and given that the VMIA has told us that the cost of going to VCAT, as similar with the people that stand behind me, is a lot more than we're seeking in compensation. Given the risk of building with another volume builder, we are only seeking our deposit back, as the Andrews government promised that they would give everyone back, and they still have not provided it to us. And the other commitment that they provided as part of the DBI policy was to return our progress payment, which still is in limbo. We're months away from getting married now. We hope that our house is going to be finished, and we're paying $1,500 a month in costs that will never be returned to us. So we're very disappointed with the VMIA that they have not been able to fulfil on their promise and their duties to give us our rectified money back.
Thanks, Alex. Any questions?
What's needed to fix the VMIA?
Well, we need to restore confidence in the residential construction sector. We need to properly invest in the VMIA. It recorded a $115 million operating loss. It's in negative equity to the tune of about $378 million. And so here you see the financial mismanagement of the Labor government playing out and actually affecting families like the ones behind me. Over 1,300 families across the state waiting for the VMIA just to get back onto their claim and to resolve their claim properly. And even more families where claims are resolved but at $0 or at low-ball offers that aren't satisfactory. So we need to invest in the VMIA. We need to restore confidence in the building and construction sector. And we know that Labor's mismanaged big build is causing inflationary effects, dramatically affecting the cost of building homes right here in Victoria.
Where would you find that money to invest if you win government? Tim Pallas said this morning the budget was very tight.
Well, we heard Tim Pallas earlier warn of another horror budget, but this goes to show why you need to do things like cut waste, why you need to manage projects effectively. You need to manage and sequence big build projects effectively and manage waste in other areas as well. And we're going through a tax reform discussion process where we're going through how we manage our tax system effectively, and we'll have more to say about that in coming years.
Just I guess. Yeah, any other questions? Any other questions?
Any other questions on this issue?
Good.
if we just ask John some questions, that'd be great.
Anything?
Just on just picking up the budget, you talk about government needs to reduce some of its wastage. If they're doing that, is that a good thing if it creates a tight budget?
Well, what we want to see is the government get back to running our budget and our economy responsibly. And the single most significant drain on public resources for the things that Victorians depend upon is the mismanagement of our infrastructure portfolio. And you know this because we've spoken to you many times about it. We've got well in excess of $30 billion in blowouts, which impose enormous strains on the rest of the budget. We know that there is waste and that there has been corruption in government as well, which has not been addressed. Despite report after report, the Allen Labor government has ignored those recommendations, and we've spoken about that in the past. So what we believe needs to be done urgently is the government needs, first of all, to outline how it's going to rein in those cost blowouts. It also needs to show Victorians what its debt plan is. We know from the Victorian Auditor General, the Parliamentary Budget Office as well, that the government doesn't have a debt reduction plan. It says it does, but it actually doesn't. And we've seen time and again the government double down on things that are only going to worsen Victoria's debt profile. And debt matters to all Victorians. I think Victorians now understand that. We're paying the highest land taxes, the highest payroll taxes. Our work cover system has faced collapse under the Allen Labor government, all because of mismanagement, and it leads to higher taxes, higher charges for employers, higher premiums. So there are many aspects of the Victorian budget that need to be addressed urgently, but the Allen government hasn't shown how it's going to do that, and it needs to in the lead up to the next budget.
Just in terms of treaty, Marcus Stewart's come out this morning on multiple media essentially saying you should apologise to the First People's Assembly of Victoria or resign over the communication between the Coalition and the First People's Assembly in regards to the treaty position. What's your response?
Look, I think what I want to see in Victoria as the alternative Premier is I want to see debate elevated. I want debate to be about the issues, not personal attacks. And so I'm not going to address those comments. My comments have always been about the merits on the debate. And there is room in Victoria and room in Australia as a vibrant democracy for people in a civil and respectful way to exchange differences of opinion. And we need to be able to do that. And as Victoria's alternative Premier, I'm committed, in particularly with debates like this that are so important, to making sure that those debates, while robust, are always respectful. And I can say that I have at all times maintained that approach to this debate.
You mentioned respectful there, then why not speak to them and let them know your position have changed?
I'm sorry.
No respect to Simon, but like why do it through the media and not speak to, you talk about respect, why not speak to them?
Well, let me make it clear, Peter Walsh, as our Indigenous Affairs spokesperson, has been in regular contact with Indigenous leaders.
Well,
perhaps not this particular individual. Well, this is one particular individual who doesn't hold a formal role. But Peter Walsh has been in touch and in regular dialogue with Indigenous leaders and, by the way, the Allen Labor government. And he explained that at length in the last couple of days.
You've had weeks and weeks to sort out your strategy ahead of the announcement. Why didn't you have a suite of Indigenous practical alternative policies to roll out at the same time?
Well, I think that's a comment you might direct to Jacinta Allen, because Jacinta Allen doesn't have a plan for closing the gap. Our commitment as an opposition in the first year of a 4-year term will be to focus on closing the gap. If Jacinta Allen, as she's indicated, wants to focus on treaty, I respect that. That is her view. We'll focus on closing the gap. Jacinta Allen will focus on treaty, and you will see us outline our initiatives over the course of the next 3 years. But you might direct that question to Jacinta Allen. We've seen a 5. Yeah. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at the facts. Just 3 of them. A 5.5% increase in Indigenous incarceration rates over the last year. We see only 30% of Indigenous students attain a year 12 level outcome. We know that Victoria has twice the rate of Indigenous Victorians in out-of-home care compared to the rest of the country. These are real-world outcomes for Indigenous Victorians. They need to be improved, these outcomes. We're focused on closing the gap. If Jacinta Allen wants to focus on treaty, I respect that. It's not our view, but she's entitled to the approach she wants to adopt.
Talk about Indigenous incarceration rates. The government is talking about things like raising the age of criminal responsibility and bail reforms to keep people out of prison. A lot of those policies are designed to reduce Indigenous incarceration rates, and you're opposing some of those. So what is it?
Our objections to Jacinta's bail laws and our objections to raising the age have nothing to do with Indigenous incarceration rates. First of all, on bail, everyone should agree, particularly when you occupy a leadership position in our state, that we should do nothing that allows somebody who represents a potential risk to other Victorians should be out on bail. I think that's a reasonable position, a common sense position that most Victorians would adopt. We certainly do as the opposition. That has nothing to do with reducing Indigenous incarceration rates, which we're totally committed to doing. And on raising the age, that has nothing to do with it either. Let's remember, courts have discretion in sentencing, and that's something I support. And courts currently have discretion when determining fitness to stand trial. That's a discretion that sits with our judges and our magistrates. And we believe that's where the discretion should remain. Imposing a one-size-fits-all rule right across the board is not a desirable policy outcome, and it will potentially put the community at risk. Justice is a complex system, and we will work through the complexities of reform. It's why I've set up a criminal justice reform portfolio as part of my shadow cabinet. But we must also remember that at the top of the list of priorities is community safety, and that's where we sit.
Just on your party's decision, how do you think it'll reflect back on your voters in Hawthorn? You're worried about your chances there, given 60% of voters, when you have a look at the federal booths in the referendum in Hawthorn, voted in favour of this. And Marcus Stewart reckons if you don't show leadership on this, he may even run against you.
Well, I'll leave those matters to others. I think the people of Hawthorn, who I'm very privileged and honoured to represent, understand that closing the gap must be our top priority. And that's where we want to focus. I understand there are different views, and I respect those different views, but we've made our position clear and our focus clear, where we want to focus resources and the investment that's desperately needed to keep young Indigenous Victorians in school, make sure they have good health, a good family around them, a loving home. That's what we're committed to, making sure they have the best opportunities in life. That's what we're committed to.
If you're committed to closing the gap, why haven't you engaged with the Europe Justice Commission submissions process?
Well, Peter Walsh is our Indigenous Affairs spokesperson, and he's liaising with Indigenous leaders right across the board, and he'll continue to do that work. And you'll see a suite of policies from us over the next 3 years around closing the gap.
Are you confident you'll be opposition leader come the next election?
Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.